Great. Hello, fourth graders. Welcome back. Let's talk again about finding variables. I hope you did well in the last unit or the last lesson. Today we are going to continue working on finding those variables, finding that missing letter, but this time we're going to work on using multiplication to find those variables. So let's take a look again at our rules of algebra. Last time, we learned that there were two steps in algebra, and we learned all about the first step, which was isolating the n, getting the n all by itself. We didn't really tackle step 2, which is just one n. And that's really where we're going to try today, is we're going to work on step 2 of getting just one n, and you'll see what I mean by that in a minute. Remember also that in order to do any of this stuff, we're going to need to use inverse operations. And inverse, of course, means opposite. We're going to use the opposite operation to do these, to try to solve these problems. So let's look at an example. So we've done addition and we've done subtraction, but how do we tackle multiplication? So let's look at this problem. My problem here is 3n equals 9. Okay, now let's go through some notation here. I want to talk about a couple things. First, I want to talk about notation here. I want to talk about the fact that 3n is really the same thing as 3 times n. I know we've covered that a couple times, but I want to really make you understand that. Why don't we just write 3 times n? Why do we write 3n? Well, in some ways it looks cleaner, it looks nicer, but it also saves space. So really, we're just taking away the times and we're just pushing them together so that we get that 3n. But it's really the same thing. It's the same thing as having that multiplication symbol there. So anytime you see 3n, when you see those letters pushed together, you know that the numbers and letters pushed together, you know that that's a hidden multiplication sign in there. So when we look back at 3n equals 9, what that really means is 3 times n equals 9. Now, n could stand for anything. So what we're saying is that there's 3 times a number, which equals 9. Now, if you know your math facts pretty well, you know that 3 times 3 equals 9. That seems very easy. But just like with the addition and subtraction, there's a reason why it works, and let's go over those reasons. All right. This is the second thing I want to talk about. 3n. That is not just one n. It is 3 n's. And I can't solve a problem in algebra if I've got 3 of something, because step 2 says that in order to solve my answer, I needed to get it down to just one n, and that makes sense. I want it to say n equals blank, n equals something, some number that I can use. All right, let's remember that inverse means opposite. And what we're going to have to do here is use the inverse operation in order to solve this. So what is the inverse operation? Well, we're doing multiplication. So what's the inverse of multiplication? It's division. Division is the inverse of multiplication. We know that because division undoes something. 3 times 3 is 9. 9 divided by 3 is 3. I also want to talk about the fact that when we divide something by itself, we can get to 1. Remember I said my goal was to get down to just one n? Well, in order to do that, I'm going to need to divide my 3n by the number that's in front of it, because 3 divided by 3, or 6 divided by 6, or 100 divided by 100 is just 1, because they only fit in one time. Now, there's another way that I can actually write division. I don't have to write it side by side like this. I can actually write it on top of each other, like a fraction. A fraction looks like 3/3, but it's also 3 divided by 3. So 3 divided by 3 is 1, 3/3 is 1. I want to turn my 3n into just 1n, which means I'm going to need to divide by 3. So I'm going to bring that idea right up here, and I'm just going to draw a line right underneath my 3n, and I'm going to divide by 3, because 3 divided by 3 is 1. Now, I want you to think back and remember last unit when we were doing something. If we only did something to one side, we unbalanced our equation. It no longer made sense. So we need to make sure that we're doing algebra, that what we're doing to one side, we're also doing to the other side. So my 3/3 becomes 1, but I need to make sure that I'm also dividing the other side by 3 as well in order to make it work. So 3/3, that becomes 1n. 9 divided by 3, well, that's just 3, and then they equal each other. So 1n equals 3. And since 1 is just 1, I have an n. I could write it as 1n or I could write it as n. I don't even need to write the 1. I could just get rid of it and just say that n equals 3. All right, let's try that again. 6n equals 54. So 6 times what number equals 54? Well, we want to do the inverse operation. We want to do the opposite operation. The opposite of multiplication is division, so that's what we're going to do. We're going to divide by a number. What number are we going to divide? Well, we want to get rid of that 6. We want to turn that 6 into a 1. So we're going to just divide it by itself. We're going to divide 6 by 6, and whatever we do to one side, we have to do to the other side, so we're going to divide 54 by 6 as well. 6 divided by 6, those two cancel each other out, cross out, they become a 1, leaving me with all n by itself, all alone. And 54 divided by 6, well, that's 9. So n equals 9, and we can check that. Is 6 times 9 54? Yes, it is. Therefore, we know we've done it right. So remember during this next section that I want you to be dividing, because that is the inverse operation, and I want you to divide by the number that is there in order to cancel those two out. Good luck.